So, the objective of this module, this example, is to utilize the Express.JS framework to develop an image server on a Windows PC. It'll be a relatively basic server. It's just going to host one image, although you could use this lesson to include more functionality if you wish. With regard to machine requirements, you will need to have Node.JS and the Node Package Manager, NPM, installed on your Windows computer. You'll also have to have the Express.JS framework downloaded to your machine. And with regard to knowledge requirements or prereqs, you should have some basic background in JavaScript development. You should know how to write code, at least some basic code in JavaScript. And you should also have some experience in the use of Node.js, as well as your machine's command prompt or terminal emulator, because that's the way we're going to be actually running our code. So we'll begin by configuring our machine to act as the Express.js server. There's a reason why this is the first example that we're going to look at. It's the easiest, the simplest way that we can build a basic server. It's going to return a message. It's also going to host a picture that we can display to our users. And it's going to run on a Windows machine, which most everybody should have access to. So it's a natural starting point. The first step is to install Node.js or Node.js. I know I said that everyone should have this installed already, but I thought I would talk about it for 1 second. So we will need to install Node.js and the Node Package Manager, also just referred to or more commonly just referred to as NPM, on our Windows machine if it's not already installed. To check if you have Node.js installed, you can open the Windows command prompt, which is the Windows version of the terminal emulator, and type in node-v. If Node.js is installed, it will return the version you have installed. If Node.js is not installed on your machine, then you need to follow these steps right here. Pretty easy. You download the Windows installer from the Node.js website. This is very easy to find in Google. We also gave the link in the introduction or the background section of these modules. There's a large green button that you click on and it automatically downloads the .msi installer. All you have to do is then double click on the MSI installer and follow the instructions for the installation. Very straightforward. Once the installation is complete, you're going to want to check that it's installed properly using the node-v command. You're also going to want to use npm-v to make sure that the Node Package Manager is also installed. But that should automatically be installed along with Node.js. Okay. Step number 2 is to install Express.js using our Node Package Manager. So for those of you who are not familiar with NPM, the Node Package Manager, it's a really great tool included in Node.js. It essentially has access to thousands or, I don't know, tens of thousands of libraries that are available and useful for JavaScript programs or for any software you may develop in Node.js. And all you have to do to install these libraries is to use the command npm install and the library that you want. So by typing these 3 lines into our command prompt, it will automatically install our Express.js along with 2 other packages that we're going to need, and I'll talk about those more in 1 second. You can see here, this is what it looked like on my computer when I installed everything. So we have install Express, we have install path, and we have install less middleware. Don't worry about these warnings, or I don't want to say don't worry, but it shouldn't prevent you from completing the project. Step 3, we need to initialize the project folder. So we're going to need a folder to contain all the different parts of our project. And the folder that I used, I called it my server. And I placed it in the directory C/users / my last name /Dropbox /temp. Now you can put it anywhere in your computer that you would like. However, you just have to be cognizant to make the appropriate changes and update to the directory that you're using. And this is mostly going to come into play at the end. Now, what is the form of this folder? Let me scroll up a little bit here so you can see the pictures as well. So these pictures right here are just a visual representation, screenshots from my computer of the folder that we're outlining up above. All right, so you have your root folder, which in my case, this is called my server. It has two folders. We have the public folder and the source folder. Within the public folder, there are multiple other folders. They're empty in my case because we're not doing a very complicated server project. But if you were doing something more complex, you could use these to organize your files. You also have the source folder, which has a subfolder called less. That's also empty. We're not using that right now. Now, the two pieces that we're going to add to this, I'm going to label them A and B. The most important one is this right here, index.js. This is the script that defines how our server works and is essentially going to make everything happen. The second is this picture right here. We'll talk about that later on. This is the picture that we're going to display back to the user, and that's going to be hosted by our server. So my folder is not structured perfectly. The picture to be displayed should be placed in the image folder. However, I just wanted to demonstrate that many of these folders are for our benefit. They're to help us organize our materials and our ideas, but we do have some flexibility with regard to where we put things as long as it's defined properly in the code where everything is. And so you can see here and here that my server, okay, my root folder is configured. It has 1, 2 folders as well as my index.js. And then you can see this is a look at the public folder right there. Now the interesting part, creating the main script. Next, we need to create the main script that defines the behavior of our Express.JS server. We're going to be using two different scripts. The first is based on our example from the background section, and it simply returns a response of success. So you'll see that this code right here is taken directly from the background section. I'm not going to talk about it too much because, again, I do discuss it in the background section, but let's talk about the most important parts. So we have to import the Express library into our project. Remember, again, all of this is going to be in our index.js file, which is right there. Next, we create an instance of our Express server. I call it my app. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, my app is going to employ the HTTP handler function, sorry, the HTTP request method of get for the root folder of our project, which would be the my server folder. And it is going to employ the handler function or an inline callback handler, which simply responds with the message success. We're not done yet, however. We do need to actually set our server to listening mode. So that's what this line down here does. It forces or it puts the server into listening mode, making it available to respond to client requests. Note that the server will listen for requests at port 1, 2, 3, 4. So you don't have to use that port, but whatever port that you use, you need to make sure that that's the one that's employed for the request. Now, I have a second version of this script, which is a little bit more complex. The main difference here is that above, this just returns text. Below, we are going to return a picture. So the more robust form of this server that hosts a photo is going to be down below. Now, I don't say it explicitly, but I showed it. What I did was I took a picture I found online and I placed it in my public folder in the same spot as CSS, image, and JS, and that's called cat picture.jpg. This course is online. I couldn't help myself but to include a cat picture. All right, so the second version of this script, so this is sort of the line right here between the two, The second version of this script is a bit more complex. I don't know if I said it explicitly. I should have. Remember that all of the sample code is available as a resource. So if you go into your course resources, you'll see RES 017 includes this whole project. So you can download and check out this code. I digress. So the second version of the script is a bit more complex. Instead of replying with a text response, it will display our cat picture that we've referenced above. Again, right, RES 17 has both versions of the code combined. They'll run together, meaning that you don't have to comment one out. So the code that's included in Res 17 actually includes both versions together. All right. So let's take a look at the more complicated version. A few differences here. We have to include two other libraries. The path library is a utility that allows us to work with files and directory paths, and the less middleware library allows us to process what are called less files as required by this version of, by the Express.JS framework, but for this version of the server that we're building. Okay, so we import our libraries again, we create our instance of our server, and now here you can see in order to host the cat picture, we have a little bit more of a complex script that's set up. It essentially employs the use command, which works hand in hand with the less middleware library. I'm not going to go into too much detail here on what the less middleware library does. I'll leave that up to you to check it out on your own. You can also see this link right here. This is one that I use to learn about Express.JS. But essentially what it does is it takes the request coming in, directs it to the appropriate directory name, as well as the source or the picture file that we're looking for, and returns that. So this piece here is different, but we still, again, have to set our server into listening mode. Again, with the same port 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, you'll see that there's two different commands. Well, I don't have them. Yes, I do have them displayed. So in order to retrieve the text response, we're going to use http //localhost:1234. This is where you have to be careful with your port number. This needs to be the same as this. If we enter this into our web browser, that will return success, as shown here. The second part of the script is executed with a slightly longer URL. Same thing, localhost with the port number, but now we are specifying a specific resource to retrieve, and that essentially is what this piece of the code right here does. It retrieves the picture from our project file and returns that as the response. Okay, so the main takeaway here is that this script needs to be, and I know I'm being a little repetitive, but needs to be placed right here in our source, our root folder called my server. So how do we run this thing? So we can then start our server by entering our project directory and executing the command node index.js. This was supposed to also be in green right here, but it isn't. And so you can see what I did. Two steps. First, I was originally in when I just started my command prompt, I was in the directory users / my last name. And so I typed cd, and then I added the remainder of my desired directory. So that's Dropbox, temp, and then my server. This again, right, brings us to the root directory of our project. Then all I have to do is execute the node space index.js command. And what happens after you hit enter there is nothing. Okay, there's not going to be any text displayed below. The browser is not going to automatically come up. It's simply going to start the server. Now, if you want to access the server, you have to do so through the browser. Like I said before, there's two different URLs that we can use. There's this one here, localhost colon 1234, which will return the text response only. Remember, again, you gotta use whatever port number you define has got to be placed in there. If we want to return the picture, then we'll use localhost colon 1234 / catpicture.jpg. You can also use this URL here. I forgot to change the port number. This is 1234. But and in the place of the X's, you can enter the IP address for your machine. Now, like I said, nothing is going to be displayed below here. That means it's running. In order to deactivate the server, you'll have to press Control-C while you're on the command prompt window, and that will essentially bring back the prompt to enter a new command. Okay, so what is the result? Here, you can see what happens when I enter the URL localhost colon 1234, which is this example right here. And it simply just displays success as we expect it to. Now, if I were to hit Control-C and turn my server off and then enter this same URL, what would come up? Nothing. Okay, it should give you an error. You can also see an example of retrieving, oh, it's such a cute cat picture, of retrieving the cat picture. And again, you have to use this different variation on the URL. So localhost colon 1234 / catpicture.jpg, and that's the same cat picture that we have right there. And right, again, if you were to turn off your server, then that would, and you hit that same URL, it would return nothing to you.
So that marks the end of this module, this example on creating a simple image server using the Express.JS framework. I hope you found it helpful. Next, we'll jump into another example.